Hey, what's up, guys? And welcome to episode 67 of Talk4, the Quickfire Podcast, where we ask four great questions to unique and interesting people. Behind the mic today is your host, Louis Skupien. That's me. And let me introduce our very special guest for today, John. His call sign is Rain Waters, who's going to be answering some questions today. John, welcome aboard the Talk4 Podcast. Please do take a minute to just say hi to the fine people listening and introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Excited to be here. Again, really gracious for you to host me. It's somewhat different for me to be sitting on this side of the mic. Normally, I'm doing the interviews over on my podcast.
Yeah.
But as you mentioned, my name is John Waters. I go by Rain, and it came about that because I spent 13 years active duty flying in the Air Force, and part of that is you do get a call sign if you're flying fighter jets, unless you just really mess something up. But I spent 13 years, like I mentioned, flying in the Air Force. I was a T6 first assignment instructor pilot. I think the Brits call them creamies, or so I've been told. And in that time, I deployed to Afghanistan, flying MC-12s, doing intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, and then eventually made my way to the F-16, where I did combat deployment in the F-16, and then wrapped up my active duty career as F-16 Viper demo pilot, flying all across the United States and even around the world, from Colombia to Bahrain and everything in between. So quite an exciting time. Now I fly commercial airlines. I have a podcast, the Afterburner Podcast, where I'm just bringing people together to tell stories. And that's pretty much it. So day in the life of.
That is so cool. What a badass man we've got here. And absolute pleasure to be talking to you. And no, 100%. I've seen the videos. I mean, it does not get cooler than flying an F-16. It's just ridiculous. But okay, so it isn't one of the official questions, but I just wanted to ask it anyway. So I've had Wiz Buckley on the podcast before. His call sign's Wiz, and he told me that his call sign was from doing something remarkably stupid. And I've had another F-18 pilot on the show before. His call sign was Smurf, and they've been telling their stories about these call signs, and it tends to be something stupid that they've done. But I'm just wondering, your call sign's Rain, your surname's Waters. Is that just the easy kind of pick for them, or was there a little story behind that? And if it's something embarrassing, you don't have to share, but just wondering.
Well, there's always a story. And if anyone tells you, one, if they tell you your call sign, what it means right off the get-go, they're lying to you. And then two, there's always a story, especially the Air Force. I think when it comes to naming a fighter pilot, we spend a lot of time and thought goes into naming that person. You can't always say that about the Marines, and maybe sometimes the Navy. Like when you kind of burn through the night of naming, the drinks are flowing, and then whoever's getting named last, it's probably not going to be that great. They're probably not going to want to tell their parents. But with Rain, there was an acronym associated with it. It was something dumb I did. And I can say, I can attest my squadron mates did a very good job with a play on Waters and dumb things I did. So there you
go. Great stuff, man. Yeah, I thought so. But Wiz was kind of saying that in the old days they could have like whatever if they were brutal with the call signs, but kind of getting more towards this era, they sort of had to have like a justifiable sort of PG story for it, but they tended to try and get around that sort of thing. So yeah, always cool to hear about people's call signs. But yeah, so like I said, four great questions lined up for you today, man. We've already had one little one, but we're going to ignore that.
0.5.
I know, yeah, tell me about it. The podcast, how it goes and everything as the host. But if you're ready for question one, should we jump right into that?
We'll just rip the Band-Aid off.
I love it. All right, let's do it then. So, question one, tell us a bit about your backstory then, man. So, how did this journey in aviation start for you? And was it something you were super passionate about as a kid? How did it all come about?
I kind of found the bug early on. I would say probably about 11, 12 years old. And I was fortunate. I grew up in a community that was surrounded by aviation. There are a lot of Delta pilots where I live. All of them were ex-Air Force and Navy. My family had nothing to do with aviation. My father saw the route of a pilot might be something that interests me. So he kind of pushed me that way. I went flying with one of my neighbors it was a beautiful afternoon in a Piper Cub, door open. Like it doesn't get any better than I was hooked. And then I decided to pursue my private pilot certificate, which again, I was fortunate. I grew up around a lot of aviation people. One of my best friends, his dad wanted to teach him to fly, but wanted to teach him to fly with someone else. So on September 10th, 2001, I had my first flight. the next day, obviously, it was a catalyst and a big life-changing moment for a lot of people. I think I was no different. I saw September 11th as something, hey, I want to go serve my country. And I was fortunate to be able to go pursue something in the military and go serve in the military, but also pursue something I was passionate about, which was aviation. So kind of killing two birds with one stone, that put me on a path to where I am today.
Definitely, yeah, and wow, it's a seriously good job. And when you can kill two birds with one stone like that, you just do such a good job of it too. Especially when you can be proud about serving your country, but also doing the thing that you're most passionate about. That's such an important thing. But yeah, tell us about the military then. So when exactly did you join? Was it after 9/11 then? And what was it like? And just tell us a bit about your service and what you were flying and where.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I'll back even say, like, I'm very fortunate I found that early on, right? Because I think a lot of people don't realize if they're a teenager, the runway is pretty short. Like you say, you can always reinvent yourself and do things, but it's really those formative years that's going to set you on that trajectory. So that happened when I was in high school. And then when I was a junior in high school, so 2 years later, I went into college, and in university, we have ROTC, Reserve Officer Training Corps. So you do that concurrently while you're doing your academic studies. And at the end of the 4 years, you commission or earn your commission into the military. So I commissioned in the Air Force, and that kind of put me on the path. So 2007 is when I became a lieutenant. I spent about 15 months waiting to go to pilot training. We had such a big backlog, which was a great year because they still pay you and you get to hang out on a squadron. I was fortunate enough, I went and served down in a combat search and rescue squadron, a world I knew nothing about, but it was a great experience because I was exposed to a whole new mission set, exposed to the rescue piece, exposed to A-10s doing close air support and rescort, the rescue escort for the helicopters going in there low and slow. And I mean, for a lieutenant, I got to ride around, shoot the gun, the minigun, and the 50 cal on the helicopter, which is pretty awesome. Just again, good experience. But that was kind of my path into it. After that 15 months, I went on to pilot training, which is a year long for us, and probably most Western militaries about a year is where you spend going through training. And out of that year, I earned my wings, and they just loved my personality so much they kept me for another 3 years to stay and teach in the T6. And as I mentioned, I did a combat deployment to Afghanistan, which was kind of non-standard, but it became a standard thing during that period because we needed so many people. We needed intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance platforms. We needed more drones, and we couldn't make drones fast enough. So in that time period, we bought a bunch of King Airs, twin engine turboprops, slapped a bunch of equipment and people in it, and went out there and you hunted high value targets. Again, something I wasn't really super excited about going to do, but it was one of those things that exposed me to a whole new mission set and something different that fast forward as an F-16 guy later on down the road in Iraq and Syria, when you're in a stack with multiple aircraft, you have a better understanding what their capabilities are, where I probably would not have gleaned or understood that being a young fighter dude, that, hey, there is a plane sitting over there that has 4 people with high definition monitors, autopilot, and they have nothing but time to just look and analyze what's going on. Meanwhile, you're flying formation, looking on a tiny screen that's low resolution, working hard to do things. So kind of roundabout way, but
recently went out in the L39 Albatros with Wiz Buckley. Incredible experience, pulled about 6.5 Gs.
Nice.
Just wondering then, so comparing something like that to an F16, how much more brutal is an F16 than that? Like, how much more crazy would it be if you were just like timesing an L39 or something like that?
So I've never flown an L39 to be fair. However, I've flown aircraft that can't sustain G, which I would say an L39, and I think Wiz would probably agree. The F16, especially a Block 50, the one I flew, it's got a big old motor. You can accelerate in the vertical. So, as you're going straight up and climbing, you're still accelerating. It is a phenomenal machine. So it's the sustained Gs. And I do think there's a difference going from about 7 to 9 Gs. It's an exponential pain threshold, if you will, jumping from that 7 to 9. When I was doing the demo, it's about a 15-minute routine. In that 15-minute routine, on average, if Garmin is accurate with the watch and the heart rate monitor, burning anywhere from like 500 to 700 calories in that short little window.
Jesus.
And you're pulling 9+ Gs upwards of 15 times in that time span. So at the time, I had a very high resting G tolerance. I think, probably 6 Gs is kind of where I was hanging out, which is like on the high side for resting tolerance.
Right.
But 9Gs, like it hurts. I spent about a year after once I did the demo where I could about 30 degrees left was as far as I could look without having any kind of pain. It's got a lot better with like physical therapy and things like that. But it is soul crushing. So an L39, it doesn't have an afterburner. It's going to deplete those Gs really quickly. Now you're still going to feel it, and you still can gray out, and you still can G lock from it. But there's a video out there. I was actually flying with one of my maintenance superintendent, and he just wanted to feel the pain. And so we went out there, and for 20 plus seconds, we pulled 9+ Gs just to call it a spiral of death. And you're on it. And it is, I weighed 200 pounds. So it's like having 1,800 pounds of force exerted on your body. It hurts.
Yeah, that's so cool. Actually, quick question then. So tell me a bit more about what you were saying about the kind of the physical effects of it, because I was saying this when I went out in the L39. I said to everyone that was one of the hardest physical challenges I think I've ever done. And I've been doing sports since about 4 years old. And it was so difficult. I was exhausted after that experience and literally just needed food. So I'm just interested that I literally went to Chipotle and just devoured it in about 2 seconds. Awesome. I loved it and literally chugged the whole energy drink. I was buzzing like a rabbit after that for a few minutes. Yeah. Just tell me about that then. So how you've got the Garmin watch and everything, like let's say half an hour of flying, how taxing actually is that on the body, and how many calories are you actually burning flying a fighter jet, just out of interest?
It depends, right? Like if you're going cross country from point A to point B, 1,000 miles, whatever it is, it's probably been pretty benign and you're just sitting there. Other than thinking about I'm always thinking in a single engine fighter, when's my engine going to quit? Where am I going? When's my engine going to quit? Where am I going? So it's more of a mental game that play in there versus like the demo is very high intensity, high impact, if you will. It's a full on sprint. If you watch some of the demo videos, you're not, and I actually have 1 or 2 up there that actually have the heart rate monitor where you can kind of see it going. And it probably doesn't go below 150 until the slow speed pass. Like that's kind of like the first time you can catch your breath where you're still focused, but you've just been sprinting for the last 7 minutes, get a 30, 45 second break, and then you sprint for another 7-8 minutes. So again, again, if Garmin is accurate, anywhere burning from 400 to 700 calories, it is not uncommon just to get out of the jet after being in the jet for 20 minutes and just be completely drenched. Some fun facts about the F16 is it does have an air conditioning, right? But it is designed, the environmental cooling system, the ECS, is designed to cool all the avionics and all the things that kill and break things, right? So priority is cooling that radar up front. In a hot human environment, you have to dry the ECS out right after you start. You have to run full hot for 5 minutes. So you imagine sitting in your car, cranking it on full hot on a summer day. But then, it's like having hair dryers just blow in there because it does move a lot of air volume.
Yeah.
So flying in a place like Miami where it's just 100% humidity, you're essentially getting just a few minutes where you don't have to have it in full hot. So you're sitting in a sauna, running a full sprint. And oh, by the way, you have a gorilla that's stomping on your chest and ripping your neck around. So there's a lot of physiological things going on. The Viper has a reclined seat. And so your head is actually forward of your spine. And doing the demo, we call it the speed lid. It wasn't the JHMX, the joint helmet mounted cueing system, like the bug eye thing. That one with the JHMX, it's actually like wearing a baseball cap almost. You have about 1.5 pounds forward of your eyebrow, roughly. But now when you pull 9Gs with that, right, you got 11 pounds and now your neck is forward of your spine even more. And you're looking around trying to fight someone. I've just heard my neck crunching and grinding. So it's a lot of fun, but it's a lot of work and it is very taxing on the body.
And the seats as well. Trust me, people probably don't actually think about this, like the kind of people outside of the military and everything, but the seats are rock hard as well. That's another brutal side of it too. There is 0 padding on those seats. It is brutal, especially when you've got those G's on you as well, isn't it?
It can be. I think it's got to be probably an L39. It's a Soviet design, right?
Yeah.
I think the Viper had a little more ergonomics, and then hopefully the F-35, although I haven't flown an F-35, but it's not, it's not a lazy boy, you get some pads. And then a lot of F-16s we have flying around today have 9,000, 8,000 hours on them. And while the seats have been changed out, the pads are changed out routinely. Again, it's not super comfortable.
No, it certainly isn't.
Yeah.
So tell me about this then. So what do you think is the best fighter jet in the world? And this might be a question that you might come out with a biased answer, like, yeah, F-16, because you absolutely love it. But what do you actually think is the best fighter jet in the world? Just out of curiosity.
Well, right under the F-16, it depends on what the mission set is.
It's true.
So if you're looking for something like air dominance fighter, the Raptor is going to be it. I mean, the maneuverability of the Raptor, what it can see and what it can do is really impressive. However, now with F-35, it can't maneuver like a Raptor, but it's taken a lot of the technology from the Raptor and things that we learned with F-22 and now is incorporated into F-35, which has just made it that much more lethal. Because if we're talking about near peer threats or the next threat, the threat environment's changed. And so you need some really advanced technology to go kick down the door with advanced surface-to-air missiles and integrated air defense systems and other fifth-gen fighters. But then there's also a caveat too, is like, well, if, near peer threats have fifth-gen fighters and everyone's going to comm jam and GPS jam, when time comes to go across the border, like, initially once you're pointing at each other for the first volley, you know who the bad guys are. But once you mix it up, now you're going to have to go to the merge. And now you're going to maneuver just like Vietnam and dogfight. So then, the Raptor is going to be a much more maneuverable fighter. So I think if I really had to pin it down, the F-35, just with what it is bringing, it's bringing the next generation. It'd just be nice if it was as maneuverable as a Raptor, but you can't have it all.
It's absolutely awesome. And just so I'm kind of going a little bit off topic here, but I just love asking questions. And it's just something that's popped in my head. So Top Gun Maverick, fantastic movie. I absolutely loved watching it. Wiz wasn't a big fan of it, but that's a different story. But, towards the start, Ed Harris, he's talking about the kind of unmanned drones and everything. And we're seeing a lot of unmanned drones being brought into, like the war in Ukraine and stuff. I'm interested then. So do you think like what he was saying about sort of phasing out the sort of piloted aircraft, do you think that's something that will actually happen in the future? Or do you think there's always going to be a place for like the fighter pilots and real pilots in the seats?
I think again, no one cares about my opinion. I think you'll always have a pilot there, but it would be, and maybe in the initial phase, right? You have one F-35 and he has 5 or she has 5 drone F-35 wingmen out there. And then when you start talking about AI, I mean, we're already seeing it. We've flown an F-16 with AI. We've fought them with AI controlled. So it is the future. There's some things that it's probably that I don't know, at least right now, you could remove a human from and be able to do an adaptive and dynamic situation, like talking to a JTAC, a joint terminal attack controller on the ground who's getting shot at, and can that plane look outside and visually ID the smoke that the JTACs pop? Probably not. So I think maybe it's coming, or they'll be completely removed. But my guess is you're always going to have a need for someone sitting in a seat, but you might not need 6 fighter pilots sitting in 6 jets. You might just need one who's kind of leading the gaggle out across the line.
That's a really interesting concept, actually. Wow, I hadn't thought of that, actually. It's a good point. I mean, where do you think, we look at these 5th-gen fighters and stuff, and they just seem so advanced. I mean, you look at the kind of, even something like an L39 or whatever, no offense, Wiz, mate, by the way, but that it's an outdated fighter, and you look at the kind of advances in the technology and just the general performance of these planes now in the 5th-gen stuff. I'm just, where can you go now with this? Almost like, how do you improve upon that? I mean, where do you think the kind of, technically speaking, where do you think the improvements are going to be in the future in the next generations of fighters?
Well, I think obviously hypersonics is going to be one of them. Probably a parallel we could draw that people could use their imaginations, right? If we jump back 15 years, no one knew what an iPhone was, right?
That's true.
But how much of our world has changed purely based on just having that device in your pocket, in your hand, like everything we do now. And we see how fast our world transformed around a smartphone and smart devices. I mean, now just imagine what's happening in the defense sector with how we kill, break things, or survive, etc. So there's a lot of smart people, whether it's hypersonic to laser energy. You can go down the rabbit hole and tinfoil hat of now we're calling them UAPs, unidentified, UFOs, right? And the maneuverability and things that those things are capable of, if they're real or not real, who knows? But so it's going to be interesting. 10 years from now, it's going to be an entirely different landscape, and that technology is only going to continue to accelerate, I think, at a faster and faster rate.
Yeah, it's fascinating because you look at these things. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, my dad's first phone. I mean, it was one of those tiny, tiny things. Like the screen was just, I don't know how you could make anything out of them. It was the one with the buttons where you had to like click 6 times and one button to get
right.
a capital C out or something. And now you look at these things nowadays, even stuff like another little example is when I went flying, I used my old GoPro 3 to record the footage, and I recently bought a GoPro 11. You look at the kind of difference in quality and the capabilities and everything. It's just mind blowing. So you look at the difference in these jets, like the 5th gen to the older planes, and you think, and you just look at it and you just think it's so advanced, but how can you kind of advance this even more? But then I'm sure we would have probably been saying that back then as well. Would you say that that's probably the mindset too? And do you think these planes are going to look very different in the future from these kind of advanced looks like, the F-35s and stuff?
The NGAD, next generation air dominance fighter, that's one thing our Air Force, the Royal Air Force, both in England and Australia, I think the Koreans, the Japanese, I think there's 6 different designs kind of out there in competition. Most of them don't have tails, right? And that's dealing with like RF spectrums and things of that nature. So maybe it'll look more like Dark Star from Top Gun Maverick. Again, it'll be interesting to see. There's some really, it's amazing to see, like an F-16, right? Inherently, that's the same plane. The guts of it have been ripped out and changed out with various computers and things like that. But with slide rules, they designed and created this fighter that is arguably probably the most versatile and most proliferated fighter the world has ever seen. So to think now, like what is possible and what's capable, you start, again, using AI, all these different technologies are being leveraged. Red 6 is a company that I talked about, but is founded by former British Tornado pilot. He was the first F-22 exchange pilot. And it's wild when you see what they're doing with augmented reality, developing that. So, you can go out there in an F-22 or an F-16. And if you're fighting a Chinese J-20, you can go out there and you can merge in augmented reality and see a J-20 that's using AI that is maneuvering in relation to you to fight its best fight against you. Wow. So it's wild to see just what has transpired. And Red 6, probably Bond is going to, but probably 2019 is really, I think, when they started that. And like 4 years later, you got videos like they've been out there demonstrating what they're doing with augmented reality, and it's in such a dynamic environment as flight is wild to me. I'm simple-minded though, so.
No, I mean, one of the things I heard about recently too was, I'm not sure if it is new or if that's just kind of like an outdated story or something, but I've heard about this new helmet that goes on the pilots, and you can see straight through the plane. Is that right?
Yeah, it's funny. Actually, I did a breakdown video that I just have up on my Clips YouTube channel with Bayo's F-35 demo pilot. So the F-35 helmet costs about $400,000.
Jesus.
It is an impressive piece of technology, but the F-35 has
don't
IR
drop
cameras.
It.
Yeah, it has. Don't drop the helmet. That's a whole nother story in itself. But the pilot can literally look through themselves or look back through the seat, and then the camera's going to transpose it. fourth generation fighters, even fifth gen F-22, you're putting on night vision goggles that are external to your helmet. So you're snapping those on like if you're watching Zero Dark 30, like, the Navy SEAL is going to raid a house. In a fighter jet, you have goggles hanging off your head, which if you go pull 7Gs at night, now you have this moment arm that's 7 inches out in front of your face that weighs 4 pounds. So now your neck's just getting pulled down even more. The F-35 incorporates that. They have the IR vision thrown over their eyes, as well as the night vision incorporated into the helmet. So it's pretty wild.
So cool, isn't it? Anyway, before we move on, just a bit of trivia then. So what did you think of Top Gun Maverick then? What was your opinion on the movie and how was it received?
So I really liked it, but I walk into it knowing that, okay, this is Hollywood. In order to make it exciting, they have to have liberty doing certain things. Like when you walk in and you're like, well, we're going to over G every single plane, every single day training for this mission, and like over G it to the point where it's going to the boneyard and going to be on a stick because you pulled 10 Gs in a Hornet. Like that plane's not flying again. That plane's going to be a static display somewhere. You kind of forgive him and give that liberty. Cause my son, who's 8, we took him to see it. And, I saw Top Gun as a kid, right? Like that was a pivotal movie and inspirational to my generation. That's his. And all he talks about is Top Gun Maverick. His buddies who've seen it, they talk about Top Gun Maverick and flying fighter jets, planes fly over. So the importance of that, I think, is to me, slightly biased. It is really cool and important to get kids inspired about aviation. 100%. That's a great movie. That's a great movie to do it. So they did a good job. There are definitely a lot of movie-isms, but I just give them leeway to at least make it entertaining. Because if you did a documentary of Fighter Squadron, you're like, well, this is pretty boring. We sat and briefed for 4 hours, mission plan for 8 hours and got 20 minutes of fighting, and it wasn't that exciting.
It's so true though, and I mean, back in the when Top Gun came out, what it did for the recruiting was insane. I actually saw an image of it after Top Gun Maverick came out. The recruiters standing outside of the cinema.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they set up inside. Yeah.
That's brilliant. It's so good to see. But anyway, then, so question 3. So we've been through the military part. So tell us about your transition out of the military then. So how did you manage with that? And how did becoming part of the Viper Demo Team come about for you?
Well, so I still did the Viper Demo Team while I was in the military. That piece was right place, right time, right qualifications. I did a full assignment at Shaw Air Force Base in South Carolina and a combat coded squadron. I was set to do a permanent change of station, PCS, to Holloman, New Mexico, to be a F-16 schoolhouse instructor. Mm-hmm. The F-16 demo job came open. I applied for it. Again, went through a couple interviews, but right place, right time. I got hired to do that. So for the next 2.5 years, I stayed at Shaw and led the F-16 demo team and flew and did air shows, which was awesome. But at the end of that 2.5 years, that's where I separated from active duty Air Force, which you asked about the transition, and no one fully prepares you for getting out of the Air Force and what you're doing next. There's a lot of stress because you're trying to figure out, at least for me, I think a lot of my buddies who kind of experience the same thing. Yeah, you're used to, hey, I got a paycheck on the 1st and the 15th of the month. Let's say you get injured or you get sick. Like the Air Force is going to keep paying you, and they're going to find a desk job or something like that for you to do. My current role, like you get sick, like you're not getting a paycheck. Now there's disability payments and things it's just a little bit different, right? So there's the kind of comfort blankets that are gone once you step out into the civilian world. Obviously you get a lot more freedom, which is kind of nice, but trying to figure out, hey, where you're going to move, who's going to hire you to work for them. You're going to go to the airlines. And I was juggling if I was going to go into business, if I was going to go to the airlines, doing interviews, both in the business world, getting ready for airline interviews and juggling all that. So it was probably a tumultuous, year and a half by the time you say, hey, I'm going to start this process. I'm getting out of the Air Force, lining everything up, starting to do all your application prep, just getting your logbook in order, because the Air Force does maintain it. There's always a few errors, but you have to translate your logbook into hours that you UPS or FedEx or Delta or American Airlines. They all want something different. No one wants the same thing. So there's always a little bit of a balance. So the transition was probably the least fun I've had in quite a while.
I can imagine.
But it worked out.
It certainly did. And so with the Viper demo team, where was like your favorite place to have flown or done a demo, or like just around the world? Like you said, you've been around the world doing these things. Do you have like a favorite place that you've gone flying in?
It's really tough to pin that down because there's some iconic places of flying, like flying in San Francisco, like zipping around Alcatraz and the Golden Gate Bridge.
That's so
doing
cool.
stuff that like, Grand Theft Auto that you'd see, it's like, like this is legal. And, I'm going 600 knots across the East Bay Bridge to flying around Miami. And again, you're like on the South Beach, flying down the government cut, which has all these cruise ships. I flew as Memorial Day weekend, flying over a destroyer that had all the sailors out in their white uniforms coming back into port, going across them at, Mach 0.9. It's like, oh, this is a lot of freedom. But so those places are pretty iconic to fly. Rio Negro, Colombia, of all places. I did not know much about Colombia until we went down there. Phenomenal time. That was probably the most fanatical, if that's the right word, fans on the planet for air shows.
Wow.
It's wild. And that was an incredible experience going down there. And then it's always like, it was July and it was like 75 degrees. So it was super nice.
That's sick. So obviously these places, you've recorded them with the GoPros and stuff and put them on the YouTube channel, and it's done really well. So just next little kind of question, how did that start for you, like that side of it? And obviously you look at the channel, it's huge. You've got hundreds of thousands of subscribers and you've done really, really well with the social media side of things. So I'm just curious, how did that kind of start for you? And what was the sort of trend almost in like that subscriber count for you? Did it all just shoot up from when you just posted these things, or was there kind of a strategy to get to where you are now with the podcast and stuff?
No, so there's no strategy whatsoever other than the very beginning. When I took over the demo team, this was in 2017. I couldn't spell Instagram. I watched YouTube occasionally. And so I said, hey, what I want to do, we're doing all this stuff. We're flying with GoPros. None of this footage ever makes it out there. I think Facebook, we actually set a specific goal. Hey, I think we had like 10,000 followers. By the end of the season, we want to have 50,000 followers on Facebook. And so I made a really big push hey, let's just do a bunch of stuff on Facebook because that's what I knew. About halfway through the season, it was actually after Miami, the first time I flew it, the person who was downloading all the GoPro footage, like they really just weren't putting anything out. Come to find out they weren't doing any of that stuff, and a lot of that footage had been lost. So I then started taking all that footage when I got out of the jet. I would download it onto my hard drive, and then I would give it to them. And so again, we're still trying to encourage public affairs to do what I wanted them to do, right? Because I saw, hey, we fly in front of a crowd of 300,000 people or 4 million people at a beach or an airport, right? That's a lot of people you're showcasing the DoD to. But we can reach so many more people with social media.
100%.
By the end of the year, it just wasn't happening. So I started posting short clips, just raw clips on Instagram. Again, I couldn't spell Instagram. I started doing it. It's like, I think at the time, you can only do like horizontal videos. I would do pictures and things like that. And my Instagram just started growing and growing and growing.
Right.
But it really was Oshkosh the next year. And I'll give Chris Snyder, who is my demo superintendent in charge of all the maintenance. He found some guys from Garmin, Josh Mormon, Chad Denton. So Josh, just saw him at Sun and Fun last week. They convinced me to put a 360 camera in the jet. Did that. And I was like, whatever. They took it. The next day I came back and Josh pulled me in the Garmin tent at Oshkosh. He showed me a 1-minute clip of what he did. In that video, I think that kind of like broke the internet. I mean, I had my bosses sending me message, them reposting it, because it was the first time anyone ever seen this, like, camera stabilized in relation to the horizon, the jet's rolling around, there's fire everywhere.
So advanced.
Yeah. So it just kind of grew. And then when I got out of active duty, like I just honestly, during that time, we just focused on Instagram. Our whole team just kind of integrated and shared a bunch of stuff on Instagram. When I got out of active duty, I thought, hey, I met a lot of cool people. What's next? And that's kind of where I stumbled. I started listening to podcasts like, hey, you know what? It'd be cool to start interviewing people. So I did the podcast, and then kind of concurrently, I was like, yeah, I have this hard drives of just terabytes and terabytes of GoPro footage. And I remember Mickey, who is the Belgian demo pilot, probably in 2005, 2006. I remember watching, actually probably like 2003, 2004, because I was in college, and I remember watching his demo as a Belgian F16 guy. And I probably watched that thing 100 times. I was like, I have all this footage. I need to post it. Well, Mickey, he was one of my F16 instructors as an exchange officer at Luke. So I just started posting a lot of these videos, just raw format, just rip it off the hard drive and throw it up there with no editing. And it's obviously a lot of them have gotten a lot of views. So hopefully there's, another 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old me out there that sees it and then wants to go fly fast jets because of it.
Absolutely. Was there kind of obstacles and hurdles to jump over with sort of posting videos from inside of a fighter jet that's obviously in the military of that sort of caliber? Was it quite a simple thing to get these videos out, or did you have to sort of get approvals and stuff for that too?
You had to get approval. The initial resistance, there's a lot of resistance at that time period. Like, again, when we started doing this in 2017, you didn't see this stuff on the internet really, like maybe onesie, twosie, not proliferated. Now, if you go to Instagram, if you go anywhere, I mean, there's F-18s and F-15s and F-22s and F-35. Like, there's GoPro footage for days now. I had several really good bosses at the time who said, hey, I would like to do this. But at the time too, is like, you can use this GoPro with this serial number. This has been tested by the engineers. There's no RF interference. And those things kind of loosened up over time. Like, okay, look, this GoPro 4 is probably the same as this GoPro 4, and it's not pumping out any different emissions. So if this one breaks, we don't have to send this one to get it tested, et cetera, et cetera. Way to get all that signed off. The other piece is the security aspect of it. So doing the demo, like the data cartridge can classify the jet pretty quickly. And so doing the demo at home, I would actually fly with the data cartridge, which give me auto ground collision avoidance system, a GCAS. Going off station to an air show, if you're landing in, Chicago or Miami, there's nowhere to store that data cartridge, which is classified. So I would fly without a data cartridge. So without the data cartridge, there's no way to make it a classified jet. So then it was a pretty easy argument. Again, I had really good bosses and a really good individual, Hyde, who was running all the security and responsible for security at the time, who used common sense and said, yeah, there's no way you can there's no way you can spill classified information unless you just turn to the camera and spill your secrets verbally. And they okayed it. So then we were just off to the races. We'd have 5 GoPros every single time. And it still was a real challenge to get what I wanted, which was that volume of content out there. Like, hey, this doesn't need to be well polished. People want to see just kind of the raw footage. So if we fly in Vero Beach this weekend, we need to get that out tonight or tomorrow, not 3 weeks from now. We're on another show.
Yeah.
And our public affairs, I had some great public affairs officers with us, and then some that just really kind of struggled, or they didn't see that vision necessarily the way I did. And so some of that, I just kind of took it upon myself to push that content out there, because I felt timeliness was an important thing. And also, like, every single week, you're racking up 200 gigabytes worth of footage. So, I mean, it's still to this day, like, there are terabytes of footage that I've never seen the light of day, just because I just don't have enough time. But one day.
Well, it's good to have the content in store, though, for sure, for anything. But yeah, I mean, looking at these kind of things you've done, obviously you can have the content and you can make, a one-hit wonder or whatever, but you've clearly done a fantastic job with maintaining this, and you've clearly evolved it with the podcast too. So just talking a little bit about those successes. So what have been some of the best lessons you learned from the military that you feel have, had a big effect on, your success as a person outside of the military too? So in terms of like habits, practices, or methods, what have you really applied that's kind of had a big effect, do you think?
I think I've always been a hard worker, which, if you're not working hard, then it's probably not going to go well for you in the military, I would imagine. But if there's something I really gleaned, I think from the military, it's probably honing the ability to handle dynamic situations better, be able to, when things are going wrong, because nothing is going to go to plan, right? The enemy always gets a vote, whether that's my, 16-month-old twins. They might be the enemy today and they get a vote. They're not going to take a nap, and you got to deal with it. So it is handling those problem sets when they get thrown your way and just working through it, whether it be in chunks and, more platitudes, right? What's the nearest alligator to the boat? Like everything being going sideways, but what's the nearest threat? What's going to kill me the fastest? What's going to kill me, the soonest? Addressing that and then working it back, because again, rarely when anything goes smoothly, but figuring out, hey, here's the battle space, here's the problems I got to deal with, these are the priorities, and being able to prioritize that and then work through it in a calm manner. I'm not always perfect at doing that, but I try to be. I think the military does a pretty good job of setting you up for that, because it's usually just here. There's nothing good. It's all bad news. You got an engine fire, hydraulics out, you got nowhere to land, and the weather's bad. So start solving problems. You got no choice.
Absolutely. And yeah, like you said, it's just contingency planning too, isn't it? But what does that quote they say in the military? I think it's all the plans go out the window after first contact. It's true, yeah. Isn't it? And that's the same in life too, isn't it? It's like you can never quite plan for these things, but you can have the contingency plans and you can be as prepared as possible. So there you go. But anyway, well, look, that is the 4 questions done for today. This is the moment that everyone loves, the shameless plug. So you've got a podcast, you've got your Instagram and stuff. So please just take a minute to promote anything that you're working on, believe in, or just send my people to find your stuff, man.
Yeah, well, hey, I really appreciate you having me on here. I have the Afterburn podcast. That's something that I've really been working on the last few years, and just trying to bring together people like you to share stories. And I think that's the most rewarding part. So people can find the Afterburn podcast wherever they get their podcast. And then this year we've kind of pivoted to more of a video format. So YouTube page, the Afterburn podcast, obviously you can find the full episodes there. You can find some of these flying videos, and then Rain Waters 27 Instagram, and dare I say even TikTok. Yeah. So I'm there in those spaces as well. So
awesome stuff. John, thank you so much for joining me today for the Talk4 podcast, man. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on. It's been a great talk. Thanks, dude.
Hey, I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. And yeah, guys, so John Rain's going to be he's coming to the UK soon, so maybe get to see you there for a little bit, hopefully at some point. But I'm thinking of doing Sun and Fun maybe next year. I mean, it looks so good, so hopefully I get to see you there. But yeah, guys, this has been episode 67, and if you'd like to listen to the past episodes, go and have a look at our channel. And if you'd like to listen in for the future ones too, make sure to hit that subscribe button and spread some love by leaving a like and a comment. Signing off for now.